welcome everybody. We're here with my friend Brian Taylor, all the way from DFW.
Yes.
You're the F, right?
No.
No. That's Fort Worth.
Dude.
Frisco.
That is an F, but that's not what the F in DFW stands for.
No.
Fort Worth.
If I'm sorry if you're watching from, you can't do that.
Wow.
You can't tell people from Dallas that they're from Fort Worth, and you can't say Fort Worth.
Is it really that like?
Well, it's just
split?
It's different. They're not Fort Worth, and they're not. Fort Worth is not Dallas.
It's so interesting.
It's not the same.
Because up here, I just go, you live in Dallas.
Sure. Yeah, but someone from Fort Worth would be like, I live in Fort Worth.
That's so funny.
It still feels like Texas there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Dallas,
I see. So they're the true Texas.
Yeah, the
not
stockyards, and
Yeah.
you can go and watch the Longhorns walk. They do their little walk through the streets every day.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I just watched the show, oh gosh, Landman. It's very inappropriate for anybody like watching, like or listening. I probably wouldn't recommend it.
I've never seen it.
Guys on like oil, they're not really oil rigs, the oil things out in West Texas or whatever. And just
I
like
feel like I
stories
saw
of it.
them promoted on like in
Yellowstone. Billy Bob Thornton.
Yes.
Yes. It's the most strange, like the strangest actor to have play that character ever.
He's a
But
strange dude in general.
yes. But he was produced by the same guys who did Yellowstone. And when I watched Yellowstone, I was like, well, I guess my life is supposed to move to Montana and live on a ranch. And then when I watched this, I was like, well, I guess I'm supposed to
You
move
a Yellowstone guy? No. I'm
What?
sorry.
No, I know. It's just on my list. I just haven't
Bro.
gotten to it yet.
What do you mean it's on your list?
That's exactly.
Where have you been? It's like,
I know.
epic.
Wait, what is it on? What is it?
I don't
stream
actually, I think it's on Paramount.
on? Okay, I was gonna say Paramount.
It is really, really good.
I don't have Paramount, so that's probably why I haven't gotten around to it.
it's really emotionally aggressive.
That's fine with me.
Like,
I like
it's
it mostly
Yeah,
aggressive.
it's emotionally
dark
aggressive.
shows. It's
Yeah.
fine.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It is so much. But I loved it. I remember when I was at Refuge in Wyoming, we like asked them, we're like, so how similar
Is it like that?
is this? And they're like, you're an idiot. It's not anything like
Nothing
this.
like it.
They're like, we don't kill people every
Yeah.
day. And I'm like, oh, well.
Yeah, it's a train
did
station.
kill a horse
is that,
once.
Is that what they
Yeah.
called it? Going to the train
go
station?
to the train station. So watch the show.
Okay, got it.
You can only watch a couple
I'll
at a
just bump
time
it up
though,
on my list.
because it's a lot.
Dude.
It's a lot. Some parts and some I'm like I can't. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. The emotional.
I have a high tolerance. I'll probably be fine.
But well, I don't want to spoil it for you because I was going to start talking
Yeah.
about the finals.
That's all right.
That's good.
I actually haven't.
On that note,
seen
I do
Final
watch a lot of
Season.
Bluey though.
I watch a lot of
that
Bluey.
is- that is
Oh, yes.
constant play in my house. but- Exactly. Exactly.
It's a
do any
very
longer
good show.
than that, you'll get
My wife
royalties.
cries watching Bluey.
Oh, yeah.
Often.
Like the
And
house. Never mind.
I don't know.
I'm not going to go into the Bluey storyline, but it's fine.
But it's very good, and it's very
It's exceptional.
sentimental, and like I think I love. We've talked about this in other episodes too, because about Bluey
We
specifically.
talked about
Actually,
with Mike. Actually,
Yeah, with Mike.
Was it with Mike? That's
yeah.
so funny.
But like TV shows now are written by people who are my age, and so there's all these like references to things that because they know if I can get the parents
Yes.
in.
Kids-
Then they
yep,
will watch.
you've got-
They will
yep.
watch the show because
100%.
mom and dad will say, "Let's go watch Bluey," or "Let's go watch whatever."
Because you feel seen.
100%. Bluey is that.
You know they did that for like our parents too.
I know.
Right.
It's
I
so
know.
funny.
I know.
And I never got it until
Which-
I was a parent.
What would be an example? 'Cause I don't know any of these shows in the
So like if
olden
you
days.
go back and watch, I don't. How old are you?
Well,
you said
I'm
that,
not
like-
watching the shows that my parents watched when they were
Gilligan's
young.
Island.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
No, like I don't know what would be like a Full House
Okay, that's a good
or
example. Okay.
Family Matters,
Sure.
depending on like the jokes and the things that they would say
Yeah.
would go if you were a kid watching TGIF.
Yes.
Go right over your head.
yeah.
But the parents would laugh at the joke or laugh at the reference or the music or the special guest star.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you just thought it was funny. But the parents were like, I see that.
It's so funny, man.
So I do that now. I watch, the shows with my kids and they're like, why is that
Dude.
funny? I'm like, you just you had to be there.
That's right.
You had to go to Blockbuster.
Yeah.
You
I
had
miss
to have your
Blockbuster.
video card.
I actually really do miss Blockbuster. There's a great documentary of the last Blockbuster in, I think it's Utah on Netflix.
It's still open?
Yeah. It's independent. It's
It's like a historical, like nostalgia.
it's a basically
museum.
it's basically
yeah.
a museum.
There
Yeah.
was nothing like it.
There really wasn't, man.
It was just amazing to go and Oh man, and
Family Video didn't compare.
Family Video was I don't know if,
I don't think that.
Did
was
you have
everywhere.
Family Video?
No, we had a store called the closest competitor we had was a store called Hollywood Video.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
I've seen that.
Okay.
Hollywood, but Blockbuster, man.
Yeah, Blockbuster was like
You'd go and you'd see the front thing. You'd be like, are there any behind it? And you'd find them,
One.
And we would rent games before we bought
Yes.
them to see if we liked them. And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
late fees,
so many late fees.
I totally missed those.
VHS.
What a great era. I'm very happy that I grew up in the 90s.
It's the best.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I really am. I seriously am. I think it's an amazing
The 90s.
Decade.
The 90s were an amazing decade.
decade. Yeah, decade.
I mean, yeah.
Anyways,
That's usually how we
didn't-
count
so,
time.
okay,
is-
but
I don't know.
is-
But
is
how
in
old
day.
are you for real?
I'm 36. So I grew up in the 90s. Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's close.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But how did you miss Blockbuster?
I didn't miss Blockbuster. I mean, went to Blockbuster.
Oh,
we just had more family videos.
I mean, in Chicago, there were, Family Videos headquarters here or whatever. But
gotcha.
Were there the headquarters were here?
Oh, yeah. It's right in Glenview.
No
It's gone now.
kidding.
Who knew?
But
I just like seeing all the old family videos, and I'm like, hey kids, see that smoke and vape shop? That that was a family video.
We used to go there on Friday night.
you can always tell by the glass pillar in front of the
That's pretty amazing.
those family-owned businesses that have these really bizarre design aesthetics that they just somebody
Someone
thought it was
loved
cool,
it. Yeah.
and then 1,000 stores later.
Yep. That's what they have.
Yep. It's amazing. This
Wow.
has been a wild
This is
ride
how we
for the
got here.
beginning of this episode.
That's today's episode.
yeah, that's right.
Nostalgia for the win.
Yeah, right.
That's why I like starting not so serious
love
sometimes.
So who do we have with us today? What do we got?
Brian.
What's going on?
Welcome
Thank you for having me, guys.
back to where we were here from Dallas, not with the F. Now we're back to the beginning.
Yes. You can cut in here if you want.
Yeah, we probably
Cut
could.
that whole
because
beginning
nobody
part out.
would
It's
actually
fine.
know.
I just not with the F. With the F is what he said, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
With the
Yeah.
F.
Yes. But anyways, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Coming up to the cold, but it's cold in Dallas
We
right
have
now.
an Arctic blast coming through as well.
Does that mean you
But
lose power, or what happens in Texas when there's like winter things?
as long as it was snowing when I left this morning, just light dusting. You all wouldn't consider it. When I pulled
Yeah.
in here, I'm like,
But that's like it's a big deal down there.
it is. The world shuts down, but
Yeah.
we didn't have any of that. It's just really cold. So
Yeah.
they say extreme cold, like a severe thunderstorms coming in. We get severe weather, but it's just because it's cold.
Right. It's like 12 degrees.
Yeah, and for like 37 seconds
Right,
at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah. That's
But
so
we
interesting.
blow
When
the
I
power
left this
grid.
morning, it was probably like minus 3 degrees here.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah,
Roll.
it does get old very fast. I was counting like yesterday, like how many months has it been of cold weather versus like warm? Currently, we're at like five
In
months of
what?
cold.
In the last 12 months in a rolling basis? Or
yeah,
like, how are you calculating?
I'm more thinking like, how long has it been since like I saw the sun for real?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's thank you for thank
I
you.
see you. Yeah, it's great.
Thank
it is
you.
pretty terrible.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like flying in this morning and you're like above, and then it's like you start to go below the cloud line, and I'm like, oh, it's very different down here.
Oh, yeah. I know.
It's very different. Up there was so, I was like,
Yeah.
I even texted a picture to my wife. Look how amazing this is. And then like we're coming in and landing, and the snow is pretty, but I'm realizing it's like gray. Everything is
yes.
everything
Yes,
is gray. And
it's
see,
like-
for us, I think it'll be 65 this weekend.
Oh,
serious?
It was 80. It was 80 2 weeks ago.
Oh
We had
my
And then it was
gosh.
40 the next day. Somebody said that Texas temperatures are like Powerball numbers. You just kind of Texas just throws
whatever,
it out.
man.
Dallas is like, what are we gonna do today? 3 degrees.
Yep.
89 degrees. You know.
I think it's crazy that also we're on the weather, but
Yeah, it's great.
We just can't do
it's
anything.
fine.
I blame Caleb.
Always, it's
That
fine.
one.
That one.
Who knows which one it is?
I think it's crazy though. Like when you think about, okay, we'll get to, I don't know, coldest minus 20, minus 30, maybe like actual, like once a year for like
Yeah.
a day, right? And then you go like over a 12-month period, you have minus 30 up to, it'll get 100 degrees in the summertime in August, maybe early September. You're like, it's a 130 degree swing that our bodies do every year. It's amazing. I would rather not have to do that.
Yeah.
But wow,
I'm like that. It's-
God makes some
weather
cool
Iron Man.
people and some great places, and we are living in one.
The full spectrum of experience.
Yeah. So now that we've established that you're from Dallas,
And that it's
Dallas.
very cold in
and
Dallas.
it's very just for today.
good baseline things to know.
Good
Yep.
thing to know.
yeah. tell us a little bit about you, man.
Yeah.
I met you for the first time 2019.
Yeah.
In Malibu, California.
Sure did.
It was not cold in Malibu.
It was not cold.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
very warm. It was very beautiful. I actually looked when the LA fires were happening because I was like, that looks really close. And I didn't really know where it was, but I looked up the monastery that we were at.
Yeah.
And it was, was within a couple of miles.
Yeah, it was
That's a good segue. So what were you doing at a monastery in
No,
Malibu
it's like
in
a
2019?
retreat center.
It's like a joke.
They use it as a retreat center, and a team we're both part of with Slingshot Group. They did that was that your first?
That was my first.
It was my first too.
Yeah.
So it was our first all staff gathering. We took a few days and they brought everybody.
Yeah.
That year was in Malibu.
Yeah.
And we've moved it since, but
that
that's
was very fun.
It was a lot of fun. And it also is like, for people that travel a lot, it's a different thing to go to like a space where it's like you're just kind of up.
Yes.
And it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But like the ocean's right over there and it's Malibu.
Yep.
But you're just kind of tucked away, get away to hear God. And different from, landing at O'Hare.
You didn't hear God on the way
Correct.
into O'Hare this morning?
I did. And it was more, maybe God heard me.
Yeah.
It was a prayer of gratitude.
That's right.
Because like I said, when I
you
got
get to leave.
I'm like, oh, my flight tonight. I'll be back in God's country soon enough.
Oh, that's so funny.
Okay, so give us a little overview.
Yeah.
Maybe start with a quick smattering of what do you do now? And then back up and like, how did you get there? A little journey, ministry history. How'd you end up in Dallas? All that good stuff.
So what do I do now? So these days, I have to give a little context that probably almost 25 years I served on a local church staff, primarily in worship and creative ministry of some kind. I started as a teenager. I was leading my first music ministry part-time at a church when I was 16, I think is when I went back and looked. Awesome, maybe in some ways, but there are other ways that I'm like, oh, please don't do that to 16-year-olds. But it was a small church. It was great. So then after that, what I've done since is my wife and I, we have a ministry. We lead worship, and I get the chance to do some speaking. And then I work as a leadership coach, do a lot of work. We do some of that through Slingshot Group. So with Slingshot, I oversee the worship and creative arts division. And Slingshot helps churches and nonprofits build remarkable teams through staffing and coaching. And then I also work kind of as a part of our group doing some speaking and executive coaching. So some church leaders, some marketplace, corporate leaders. I really just love helping people get to where they're going. Like if you could, like, what do you do? I would say that I'm like a bridge builder. So if I find a person that's on a journey, I want to help them figure out where they're going and figure out how to get there. And I even feel like that when I'm leading worship. Sure. It's like I feel like my job is like these people are not here to sit and listen to me. They're here to connect with the Lord. How do I use what he's given me to help them get to where they want to go? And so, that's what I do. I feel like I'm a bridge builder, and, sometimes you get walked on, but you become the bridge.
That's a
really
great
good
way to
metaphor.
describe it.
Listen,
servant leadership,
at
man.
the end of
like
the
you're
day,
just there to serve.
it's like if I can, that's where, like, that's what my purpose is. And not everybody has that purpose. And so I get to do a lot of fun things as a part of that.
That's awesome. Where was the church you started when you were 16 and shouldn't have started?
It was an interesting thing because I grew up in the church, right? So I actually grew up in predominantly black churches. So gospel music and lots of vibrant, emotional, choirs and all the things. So in that environment, I started playing piano when I was 3. I started playing for the church. I was probably 7 or 8.
That's wild.
And like directing choirs, and because you just grew up and it was like natural. Like that's what I was going to do. I was raised by my grandparents. They were both volunteers in the ministry. So my grandfather, depending on the church, was either like a trustee or a deacon, depending on the polity. And then, they both sang did choir stuff. And so my grandfather did the men's choir. My grandmother did the youth choir and the adult choir. And then they had a family group. So my grandmother's family for 50 some years had a traveling family choir that would go like through the generations. And the matriarch of that family, our big mama is what we called her. She died when she was like 109.
Wow.
She had 15,
That's crazy.
15 kids. It was crazy. Our family reunions just on that side of the family it's hundreds of people.
Wow.
And so that's what we did, church on Sundays in the morning. And then I'd probably watch a half of a game on Sunday afternoon. Wouldn't even really get out of church clothes, get to halftime. And then our family was going somewhere to sing at a church, an hour away, 2 hours away. And then we were in Bible study on Tuesday and choir rehearsal on Wednesday. That's what I grew up in. So that's why it made, like when I was a teenager, like I was connected to the leadership of the church and they were like, hey, can you just help us do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And I just probably shouldn't have, to be honest with you. Like me, now, if I would have been like, no, don't put that. But I didn't, because I had the spiritual leadership component, I didn't have a real lens or frame for.
Sure.
So the music, I understood, but I'm like, oh, and I was leading, it's all adults.
Yeah.
Like my grandparents' age,
That's crazy.
It was a little wild.
But I'm sure it taught you a lot of maybe hard-learned lessons. I mean, like I'd be curious, you mentioned like you got the music part, but maybe the spiritual part or the leadership part. Like what were some of the things that you had to develop real fast as you went through that experience and on to whatever the next 25 years looked like?
So definitely people leadership and how to work with people. So my primary experience was in the music business. And when you're dealing with professionals, like I did a lot of session work and production. When I tell somebody like, hey, like I don't like that, I can actually say it just like that.
Yep.
Hey, I don't like that. Let's do something different. They're not going to be like,
Yeah.
In the church world, you're like, I don't like that. And they're like, well, you don't like me. No, I didn't like that one. Can you just not play that one note or that one riff on the bass? Yeah. And it's like suddenly like, well, why do you get to tell me what I'm supposed to do? And I'm like, I'm not coming for you. It just, it's better than being like, you suck. I'm not going to say, just play something different. Or let's play it kind of like the record. Yeah. So the people leadership component, I burned a ton of people. I think not knowing. And then I'm like a teenager. And they're like, who is this dude like giving direction? I've been singing for 40 years, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Yeah. So I didn't learn that until, so actually it was the first church. After that church, I left that church and found a church for myself. And that whole story is crazy, but that church, the pastors kind of took me under their wing and they were like, you got a lot of talent and you need a lot of work. And so it was like, okay, you're going to be in the minister's training program. You're going to be at prayer on Tuesday nights. You're going to be in these classes. You're going to be taking notes in Bible study. You're going to become like, we're going to get your their depth of knowledge and some of the leadership. We're going to start to flesh some of that out in you. Because I just didn't have the foundation for it because it wasn't high value in the team. So, I mean, the people leadership. And then also just recognizing the importance of like life with the Spirit, like life with Jesus, not just, I don't mean this demeaning of anyone's experience or thing, but I look back and I go, a lot of it, church felt as much cultural and social as it did spiritual. So you went to church because that's what you did. Yeah. You sang in the choir because you could sing. You led that song because you're the best soloist. Nobody was ever asking, like, what does your life look like? Or are you actually following Jesus? Yeah. Like, do you believe what the Bible says? Those weren't questions that were asked, even when I used to play for a bunch of churches. Nobody asked me about my life. Yeah. And at some points, if they had those answers would have been tough, but I don't think they wanted to know them. Mm. And so when there's a hyper focus on your ability and your giftedness or your skill set, and there's not any kind of focus on your life, you're setting people up for really hard lessons, to go back to what you said. Because I think there's some things, if someone had mentored and walked alongside me when my gift was flourishing, but my character was not, then maybe I could have avoided some of the things that I ended up having really difficult lessons with me and God. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that I would say that's what I learned is your gift will open up a lot. Bible talks about a man's gift making room. Yes, 100%. It will make room for you, but you better know what to do in that room and how to carry the weight of that room when you get there, if you want to stay in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's really interesting how you phrased it a minute ago. Of they didn't ask you questions because maybe they didn't want to know the answers. Mm-hmm. Maybe talk a little bit to leaders that are in positions to ask that question.
Yeah.
And, how to approach that and how to, to me, the first thing that comes to mind is like, what's the priority in your ministry? Mm-hmm. Like the product or the people or the sort of like surface level experience or the development of those on your team? Like, I don't know, talk a little bit about how that looks to you.
Yeah. That is like I think leaders that are doing a good job live in that tension every day. Mm. If you're not living in that tension every day as a leader, you might want to go back and check and make sure you're not running on autopilot.
Yeah.
Because people are not predictable. And someone that's doing really well in one chunk can very quickly, we've probably all experienced that in our own lives where something comes and it just knocks you clean off. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, how did I get here? Mm-hmm. When did this happen? And so I would say for the leaders that are processing that, it's hard. If someone would have asked me those questions then, I probably would. I was pretty stubborn. Mm. Still can have stubborn tendencies. I'm not an Enneagram 8, but I really feel very closely. There's a bond there. I'm a 3, but there's a bond. I feel a bond. I probably would have kind of bucked at it a bit if they had asked me then. But if they had stayed with it, I think eventually I would have seen that it was not coming from a place just to correct me or just to have something on me, but if it was actually to help develop me. But if those leaders, the first time you ask those questions, if you've never asked them before, it's very awkward.
Right.
And you might even get that kind of a response from a person that's like, why are you asking me?
Totally.
We are naturally defensive when someone crosses a line that we've drawn that we might not even know we've drawn. But I would say then to the leader that's then, having that question asked of them, you got to figure out what's in your flesh that's throwing that alarm.
Yeah.
Because the Bible talks about us crucifying our flesh and denying ourselves, taking up our cross, following Jesus, right? And we were on a call once and one of the leaders from our church said, every time I feel that, it just reminds me there's a part of my flesh that's not dead yet because dead flesh doesn't throw up any signals. Mm-hmm. If I'm dead and you hit me with a hammer, I don't feel it. Mm-hmm. And so if there's something in me that's rising because someone's asking me a question that's making me uncomfortable, it's like what part of me, what part of my pride, what part of my flesh needs to get put to death. And so those conversations are awkward, but it's worth stepping over the awkwardness. And even you might have to say that. When I start leading a team and we have a tough conversation, one of the things I will always say is listen, I know I would love for us to sit and take the next 18 months to go to coffee every week and get to know each other and build up, as much relationship as we can. But I need you to loan me some equity in advance. And we're going to have to step over the awkwardness together because I don't want to waste the next 2 years. We can do that, but we also have things that we need to do while we're building that relationship. And I think if you do that, you'll get past that initial friction point prayerfully.
I think people use that length of time as an excuse to beat around the bush longer, to build the relationships before they have the hard conversations, whether it's with a staff member or volunteer, because that's what we've all been told. Even the last 10 years, I think of all of the conversations of people going like, build, we say it all the time, like, man, the relationship between, for us, it was the booth and the stage and building that relationship with the guitar player before I go up and tell him to change something. But I could wait. He's only on once a month for the next 2 years for me to understand what his kids' names 100%. Are. And then all of a sudden, I'm like 2 years in, and now I'm just now for the first time telling him to do something differently or that I didn't like something. And it's like, dude, we've been doing this for 2 years. Why are we just now doing that? But
is the term like dichotomy? It's like a false dichotomy, like a false either or. There's a lot of that in the ministry space, in the leadership space. We think, well, if I'm building relationship, then I also can't build accountability. Yeah. Like we put that as an either or, or we say, hey, if it's going to be about people, we can't have any process. Like, no. The way I see it is accountability helps you build the relationship. Process helps you care for the people. If you take away one of those legs, the thing topples. Yeah. But I think that false kind of either or situation actually is more often about avoidance, maybe a bit of apathy, which possibly what the leaders might have been feeling. Yeah. They could have been completely oblivious and not cared because no one did it for them. But I see that a lot where at least I don't want to ask that, because then if I get the answer, I'm accountable. Now I know. Like I know that your life is not what it's supposed to be. And then I have the decision. Do I keep letting you use that gift and talent and skill, knowing what I know? Or do I take what might be the harder route of saying, hey, we got to work on that before I put you back in a place of influence, And so if we're not willing to do both, then we probably shouldn't take on positions that require that. Just don't be a leader. Yeah. Be the best doer and the best kind of give you a role and let you run with somebody else's play. But you want to step up into leadership, it's going to require you to step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. That's really, really good. Yeah. Go ahead.
You started touching on it even just there with like, you mentioned you step into a leadership role with a team and hey, here's some expectations I want to set. Here's some things we got to do. Here's some credibility I want you to loan me, things like that. And as you've gone through your different roles, like you've probably had to do that multiple times, right? Like for people that are stepping into a newer role, whether it's at a church they've been at or a new role in a new community that they're just getting to know people, like what are some of the key things that are able to, one, let them build that relationship rapidly and demonstrate that trust without sacrificing the actual progress of, hey, we're actually moving things forward. Like how have you seen that tension held well?
Yeah.
Because I think you probably can actually make a lot of ground in a relationship in just a couple months. Like it doesn't have to take 2 years. With intentionality, like you can move those things forward. But what have you seen effectively in your own situation?
So I'll give, because there's some context like that, it changes. So most all of my ministry experience is in very large organizations, several thousand up to 30, 40,000 people. So these are large teams that we're leading, multiple locations. The complexity in an organization like that definitely feels different than, a church of 1,500 or church of 500 or organization with 30 staff members or 15 staff members. So I'm trying to think of things that would apply to leaders that are in that space. So I would say that the first thing is when you're coming in, if you don't have the equity, then point towards the future as a new direction, not as we're going to do this better than we've done it before. Yeah. Because I think a lot of leaders cripple their influence because they say, hey, like this isn't working. And a lot of times you actually don't have to address anything about what's been happening up until that point. Eventually, you might be able to have some of those conversations, but most of the time they're not necessary. You honor the past, you honor what has been with every opportunity, and then you say, okay, here's what I'd like for us to try. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about what you do now. Why do you do it the way that you do it now? Help me understand how you got here. and give people a chance to speak into that, to make sure you're not going around a mountain again that they've already been around, 10, 15 times.
Sure, totally.
Because that great new idea or the great new thing might actually have been talked about 10, 15 years ago, and they've never been able to get past it. And then you say it in the room and they all roll their eyes.
Totally.
Well, because you didn't take the time to listen. Yeah. So listen, obviously, before you move forward with anything, take the time to listen. Make sure that you're casting vision as just a new direction, different direction, not a better or worse. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say that the third thing is make sure that you feel if you're the leader, it's your responsibility. Now, I would actually say the same thing to the team member. If you're the team member, it's your responsibility. Yeah. But if you're the leader listening, it is your responsibility to build those inroads. If both people on the side of the relationship consider it to be their responsibility, then you're not like, well, I wonder why they don't like me.
Yeah.
I wonder why they haven't asked me out to coffee or to go to lunch. Mm-hmm. I wonder why they haven't, invited me into a conversation. As opposed to you going to your leader and say, hey, I'd love to get some time with you. Hey, I'd love to take you. I'd love to pay to take you to coffee. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd love to get some time for our families to get together or whatever makes sense. I'm really big on personal responsibility, personal accountability. Mm-hmm. If everybody is managing themselves well and managing their own expectations, then you get to a place where a team can thrive and these bumps come and they don't derail your progress because it's just a bump. It's not a wall, just a little speed bump that we're going to get over. So I don't know if that answers your question totally, but that the importance of listening, looking forward, and then maybe taking that personal ownership.
Yeah. I think it's so easy when you're new in a role to look at all the things that you don't like about the old way.
Yeah.
And I think
it's easy.
That's so important to keep in mind of like, you don't have to critique that. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of vision to draw you into. Hopefully the vision that you're casting is compelling enough.
Yes.
That you don't have to look back and give all the negative reasons. But it's like, hey, the positive of where we want to go as a team, the things we want to be able to try, the way we want to grow, like that's your focus versus looking backwards. Like that I think is a huge piece.
And I love that you said like a different direction, not just like a new one. Yeah. It's different than what we've done before, because I think I've literally heard those conversations of like, we tried that 2 worship pastors ago.
Yep.
I've been here for 12 years singing on this stage. Mm-hmm. You've been here for a year, 18 months, whatever that is. I've seen people come and go, and we've tried that and it didn't work. And the answer in those contexts when they're trying to do the thing that 2 worship pastors did before is like, well, they didn't do it right and I will do it better. Versus we're going to go a completely new direction, because it totally it derails the mindset of thinking backwards and going, oh, okay, well, we actually haven't done that, so why not? I've seen a bunch of stuff that hasn't worked, so that is bound to do something different, at least whether it's better or worse, we don't know, but it's different than what we're doing today. So I love.
Well, when you also were talking about the importance of listening, the thing that came to mind was asking not just what have you done in the past or things like that, how do we get here, but like what are the things that have been challenging for you, or what are the pain, because when you're a leader and you're going in a certain direction, you can frame that direction in lots of different ways. So if you 100%. Hear from the team, hey, we've had a really hard time with this, or this has been challenging, or like, I never get my schedule on time, or like whatever, it's like, cool. Now, as I'm thinking about communication for where I'm going, like how does this direction alleviate the pain points that I know the team is already aware of? Yeah. And so like you start to get the synergy of, you're doing something new, but you're relating it to the things that they actually value making progress in and would be excited to see change.
There's almost always 2 sides of every one of those. So it's like you as the leader see, man, I'm having trouble getting people to respond to planning center invites or whatever. And you hear, man, we're having trouble, getting our schedules. Well, of course, if they're getting the schedules late, then it's going to be harder for them to accommodate it. If you don't take the time to listen, you only see that, man, this team, they're just not committed. Well, no, it's not that they're not committed. It's that we're not equipping them and resourcing them with what they need. So if you cast the vision of saying, hey, we're having a problem with schedules, so I'm going to send out these schedules a month in advance, that's going to be totally different in the reception than it would be if you're like, hey, I've heard you. And I want to make sure that you have time to plan for your family, you're serving, you're volunteering.
Exactly.
So we're going to get that schedule out a month in advance for you.
Yep.
And then my only request is that it's like if you could respond within like the first 3 to 5 days when it comes out, so that I can make sure if I got to fill somebody else in your spot, we give them the same courtesy that we're giving you. I mean, same objective, same thing. One, they're going to be walking away from that meeting probably not your biggest fan. The other, they're going to be like, wow.
So
they took the time to,
Yes.
so
He's
considerate.
so thoughtful.
Yes, yes.
Exactly.
And so that's a great
Semantics.
Great point.
So important.
Yeah. As you now like go backwards to where as you were leaving that ministry context and growing up in that space, like where did that like lead you to in your first like, oh, hey, I want to do this full time in ministry? It probably felt like you were already doing it full time in ministry in a non-paid family context.
Yeah. I mean, I was paid. I was paid, but not. Yeah. So I actually never wanted to go into full time ministry. I never asked for it. I never prayed about it. God, I just would love. What was interesting is because in the churches that I grew up in, there wasn't really a context for that. Even like one of my first full-time roles was at a church where, I didn't have to go into like the office.
The original remote work?
Yeah, I went to rehearsal. I went to meetings, certain meetings as they popped up. Majority of them happened around like evening times or whatever. And so it was like, I didn't have a concept for like a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
Right.
I worked harder than that, but not at a job. I'm an entrepreneur. So I was in the studio and we were, working with a few artists, and we'd be on the road, and I'd be coming back and get there for rehearsal and then back out.
Yeah.
And so like when that change happened, I stumbled into it. It wasn't an intentional move on my part. I knew that, God was doing something, but it was like a situation where I got asked to help a church that was in transition, and like, hey, can you help us for a little bit, like a few months while we figure out, our worship leader at the time is transitioning to a different role, and we just need some support. And it was just for the band.
Yep.
And I was like, yes, that sounds great. And that whole story is crazy. And so in those conversations, somehow we moved from, hey, can you kind of help us on an interim basis with a few things, to, hey, can you like join our staff full time? And I was like, what does that mean? And then I'm like, I have an office and a desk? This is so odd. Well, then like maybe 6 months later, the other worship leader left, and they were like, okay, you're it. Okay. And that, at the time, that church was probably maybe 6,000 to 8,000 people.
Not a small church.
Not a small church. Saturday, Sunday services, Wednesday service. And it was me, is actually where I met my wife. And I had no idea what I was doing on the people side, because it was a different environment.
Yeah.
I'd been in the Black church majority, and this was a more multicultural kind of church, large mega church kind of. So the expectations were different.
You actually were in the office from 9 to 5. That's a little different.
I'd go into the office. I was leading. I did. My wife and I. She wasn't my wife then, but we did like 5 services on a weekend, like 49, 50 weeks a year. Wednesday night. At that time, it was just like they didn't have a central staff. So I built out the central staff. I learned how to do all this stuff. But one of the things I appreciate the most is that pastor. So where my previous pastor before, their focus was a lot on the spiritual. Like, so they put me through that minister's training and stuff like that. Pastor Dale, which I don't normally use names, but this is a good one. So like Pastor Dale, I remember my first meeting with him, and he had prepared for me, like, this is everything you need to know about this role. This is everything you need to know about how we got here. I mean, he had written it out, like handed me this thing. At the time, I was like, this is a lot. But I look back on that, and I still have, I have folders full of things that and what I learned in that moment, he taught me how to come under a vision and how to come under a senior leader and support what they were doing. I mean, because we debriefed after almost every service, all 5. We would wait. And he had he's so founding pastor. So sound, worship, he had done it all at some point.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it was targeted feedback, it was targeted instruction. And we had the opportunity to serve there for 7 years. And there is not a day that goes by that I'm like, I am so glad that I learned. I mean, who gives? I was 22 at that point, just about, 22 or so, leading a worship ministry of a church of that size, never having had done anything like that before. Just a good musician.
Yeah.
In fact, I hadn't even really led a ton of worship from the front. I was on my first day to lead worship, and I realized I have actually never sung for them.
That's
I was
crazy.
scheduled to lead worship that Saturday. I mean, they knew I could, but I'd never done it. And so that journey, I kind of stumbled into it. But right before that, there was Israel Houghton, I had gone, this is back in the Israel New Breed days, and I had gone to one of his concerts or worship nights. I remember sitting in the room looking around, going like, everyone is singing here. I mean, there's black people, white people, red and yellow, black and white. They're all precious in his sight, singing right around me. And that was the moment, though, I said, if there's a way for me to be able to do something like this, because I was used to like all the environments being, I'll use the word segregated because that's really what it felt like.
Yeah.
There's black churches and white churches and, Hispanic churches, whatever. And that in that room, they were all singing the same music. And that was the moment where I went, oh, like that's what I want to do. But I didn't have a frame of reference to how to accomplish that until I started doing it with this church. And I saw because there was almost 90 nations represented in our churches in the DC area. So it's it was amazing to watch. So that's kind of, some people grow up and they're like, I just can't wait to be a full-time church staff member. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of just stumbled into it, I happened to then stumble into a very significant kind of pressure in the role, which then I kept learning the people things, trial by error and stubbornness. But then I got to experience, this is what it feels like when you really do what you're created to do. I felt that connection with my purpose. And then that made, even though the work was really difficult, it was tough. What we did was a lot to build out. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that. And that God didn't let me sabotage it because I tried to sabotage it. Because I don't know that I won't, yes, but not really. And he was like, okay, Brian, you're gonna do, to the point that my pastor at the time, when I went and had that conversation with him, there was connections that they were making, that church got on their radar kind of stuff, just crazy stuff. And they're an hour apart. But it's just, it's amazing how God, he's so good at writing the story and keeping you from messing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love, I think it's so cool. I think more churches need to have that leader pass that information down like he did to you and go, this is what you need to know. Because there's so much ambiguity when you walk into a church staff and it's on you as the expert new hire to go walk in and fix their problems and do all these things and do, you end up doing all of the things that we're talking about in this conversation. And I think it sets somebody up to win with very, very clear expectations of here's the things that we want. Here's 100%. The things that our senior leader needs. And this is what you need to do to help support that vision that, God has empowered him to lead this church and here's where we're going. And then for you to witness that at the Israel Houghton concert, I can just I see that in my mind and I go, man, there's a vast difference from a normal Sunday service to what you see in any worship night or whatever of, some artist leading that. Yeah, and it's a very cool thing that you were able to piece those all together and go, oh, we could do that at church. Like that's a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like I look now and I'm like, that's exactly what I've spent the last 20 years doing. Now, I'm not nearly as musical, and Israel's,
crazy.
It's amazing. But like it's really because I think that's what the kingdom looks like.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not hard. It's not actually not hard to do. You just have to be very intentional and really obedient. And I go back to what, that Pastor Dale, it wasn't just good, like easy stuff for me to hear. Like the first thing he said on the top, I remember, this is how much it left it. There was a quote, I don't know what else it said, but the quote said, "Resistance is futile." That was what was written across the front. Now, and it was like a ha-ha funny joke. But the reality was, he was like, hey, like, I just want to be clear. You are going to lead worship, but I really need you to understand that, like, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for this thing. So if I ask you for something, I just need, like, if I ask you for a song, if I ask you for a change, it's not personal. I just need you to do it. And as a musician, that was really hard for me at first, because he would call, and we'd be like 15, 20 minutes before rehearsal. It's like, hey, can you do this song in this key, in this slot? And I'd be like, but we work so hard. We work so hard to get this amazing moment or this amazing
I've arranged
flow.
it so the entire
Like,
set is in G.
It's like, no,
just
just
the
100%.
pad literally never changed.
And it's going to be like, it was like, crown him with many crowns, all 4 verses.
Yeah.
Like, the potentate of time, creator of the rolling spheres, ineffably sublime. Like, what? But the thing was, like, when I tell you, like, that is where I learned how to submit, and God showed up in such incredible ways every single time without fail. Like, I cannot think of a time where he gave that kind of instruction. And even if I didn't quite get or understand it, and maybe at the beginning I was like, a little frustrated. We all get a little frustrated. And I was young, but I watched God keep showing up. And I was like, oh, so this is the fruit that is on the other side of obedience and submission. And what happened was, the more I said yes, actually the less those calls came. Because the more I said yes, the more we were in sync, and the more trust I built.
Yeah.
And so it was like this beautiful thing where because I just stuck it out and I said yes, by a few years in, like we had a lot of freedom to be able to do things, and there was a lot of trust that was extended. And I think a lot of leaders miss that you have to earn that.
Yeah.
You have to earn that with your talent and skill is amazing. If you don't take the time to submit it, it really is division. Like that's what it means. 2 different visions. And to be submitted, you can't have division. You have to just go with what God is saying to the leaders. And if you steward that well, you get a little bit more. You get a little bit more.
I think a lot of people need to chew on that sometimes. It's like, it's very challenging. It reminds me, rewinding to early in your story, you were talking about how when you're a professional musician and your producer's just like, yeah, I don't like that, do this different. Like, it's the same thing. Like, who's the producer in this context?
100%.
Right? And like you said, for some reason in church, like sometimes people, like, it doesn't get thought of that way. It becomes more personal or more subjective or whatever. But to like bring that same vision into the context you're describing, the producer's got the vision, and they're bringing all these amazing talents together to create something amazing, but there's still one vision, and there's still one person who's having to respond, like you said, responsible 100%. For the outcome, right? And it has nothing to do with like passing judgment on the quality of all the people involved. But the thing that you're able to do when you are pursuing that thing in a unified way is so much greater than when everyone's running in different directions. And I mean, that thread kind of is interesting how it connects for your story there.
Because we have a tendency to want to prove, like, especially creatives. I still fight this in myself. There are moments where I'm like, I want to prove that I belong here. I want to prove that I belong at this table or belong in this conversation. And the problem is when you start to try to prove that you deserve the seat you already have, it almost always does the opposite.
Yes.
It proves that you're not ready. You're not ready for it. And so we either prove or then we just personalize. We take it so personal. And it's like, it's not, in that other context, I wouldn't be offended. Yeah. I remember one time I did a talk and it was about micromanagement. And sometimes I say things they're spiky. I'll say it's a little spiky. But the point was, like, I didn't think, like, you can't really say a leader's micromanaging. They've given it a label. But a leader can kind of zoom in as close as they want. Now, the wisest leaders aren't going to be tyrants, right? The wise leaders let their leaders lead. But like, for me to tell my leader, like, what, you can ask me this, but you can't go past that line, or you're being a micromanager. It's like, no, that's not really how this works. And the better question is, if I've got an issue, is that the kind of leader I want to work for? Like, when you put it through that lens, like, maybe you might be in a position where your pastor wasn't like mine at the time, and that just continues. That doesn't mean it's a problem with them. That just means you got to decide, is that the kind of organization that you want to be a part of? Because I know plenty of leaders that they come and they sit with me and they're like, I can't get any feedback. I can't get any coaching. So the thing that's driving you crazy is the thing that they're like dying for. Yeah. I wish I could get a debrief with my pastor every week. But we put this through the lens of, we put our expectations on these leaders, on these organizations. And then when they don't meet them, well, we're surprised and like, well, you signed up for the wrong thing, maybe. Yeah. Maybe go, like, you too. There was like that old show talking about the 90s again, or I think it was like Wife Swap or something like that, where the mom would go live in the other house and like throw out all their junk food. It was crazy. I'm like, it's like almost like I want to be like, can you go work over there for them? And can you go work over there for them? But both of those people think something is wrong. He says, no, there's misalignment. You don't value the same things. And that's okay. If there's certain producers, maybe I don't want to work with that producer again. Doesn't mean that they're a bad producer. It just means the way we work, it doesn't work together. And so I think making sure that we're setting up expectations, that you don't go into an organization and put your fingerprint on it. You go to an organization because that fingerprint matches. Yeah. Those values don't match. If you're not after the same thing, you're not going to be able to force them in any kind of box. Yeah. Same thing for a leader. You cannot bring someone onto your team that does not ascribe to the same values, that's not ready for that kind of, linking of arms. You won't be able to refine them enough. It'll just be frustrating for both of you.
Yeah. I mean, man, I'm thinking about that scenario and your pastor coming up and going, hey, we want to change something, 15 minutes before, whether it's rehearsal or service, whatever that looks like. And I think of like so many scenarios that I was in those circumstances, and it did not go the way that you just described it. It went because we fought it, or we felt like it was a personal attack on something that we planned as creatives, or all this time and money and resources, whatever it took to do that opener that we all of a sudden want to change the Saturday at 11 a.m. before the 1 p.m. service of Easter.
Yeah.
That was my last Easter experience.
I've had plenty of those.
And I go, man, like, but in that, the way that you said, like, but God showed up. Like we said yes, and in obedience, God showed up, and there was proof in the pudding, and going, hey, I don't know why, I didn't know why the decision was made, or if I necessarily agreed with it, but your obedience in it showed God coming through. And then, man, like what you're saying and going, and those requests became less and less over time because of the trust that was built with your leadership. Yeah. And I go, man, how many more problems could be solved long-term on church staffs between any position in ministry by just doing those things? And I think it's really hard to receive that feedback or be told to do something differently. If my head is not in that space to be able to receive it in that way, I just go, man, like I'm only going to hurt and shoot myself in the foot by doing that. Cause then it's like, my pastor's out to get me. He hates me. And then I'm trying to reprove the seat that I'm already sitting in. It's just an insane cycle that like all I'm thinking about is Caleb of the past and things that I've seen and done. And I just go, man, I wish that, that would have happened more.
And for the record, I think it's important to note, like, I did not nail that. Like, that was a learned submission for me. The thing that the leader had, the pastor had in his favor was that first meeting.
Yeah.
So there was no ambiguity about where the buck stopped.
Yeah.
That didn't, though, make it, I still had to fight in my own heart and mind and process with God. And I remember, like you're talking, I remember one of those moments, and it's actually not even about him. It was about me. And, you show up and you're like, God, I'm just not in a place I should be today. I don't know, pick whatever. You fight an argument at home or didn't crack open my Bible. I got too busy this week. And I'm like, God, please, like, I need your help to go. I'm like, the countdown's running. I just need help. I'm feeling dry. And I'm like, just don't hold it against the people, like David kind of stuff. And I remember the Lord being like, do you really think you're that important? That I wouldn't meet with them because you got in the way? He's like, we'll deal with you later. I'm going to go meet with them now. And I remember when the Lord told me that, and I mean, it was a swift kick to me. It didn't have anything to do with anybody else. I realized and immediately equated. It's like, oh, I get it. Like, even if that song edition was not the right thing, whatever that means, like, God is going to still show up and meet. So he's not asking me whether or not the song was the right thing. Yeah. He's asking me, how are you going to respond to the thing? I mean, that's what responsibility is. Like, my ability to respond, I have two options. I submit or I don't. If it's the wrong decision, and I'm not talking sin, you understand. I'm talking, this is a song.
Is this the right worship set? Is this the perfect worship set?
Like, which is a whole different conversation. But I'm like, so it's crowning him with many crowns, all 4 verses. Not necessarily my favorite, though. I think that's a pretty rad hymn. God's like, I don't care if it's the right song. I care if you're going to do what you were asked to do. And I will honor the obedience. And I believe, just like he said, I'll deal with you. Yeah. He's like, if there's someone to be dealt with, that's above my pay grade. My pay grade says, I was asked by my leader to do a song. I'm going to do that. And I think so. It's like that combination is why. So, like, if the leaders that are listening are like struggling with that and maybe have a history of some of the stuff that we navigated of the friction, like, you can always press reset, and tomorrow can be different. Today can be different. You might be going to that rehearsal right now. Like, today can actually be different. Don't tie it so much to the outcome that you're expecting. It's about the right input. It's about the right obedience. Like, obedience is our job. The outcome is God's.
Yeah, that makes me think, like, how so much of life in every context, in ministry, out of ministry, whatever, it's actually so little about what you're doing. Yeah. Like, specifically what you're doing, but how are you doing it in a way that is faithful, 100%. Kind, generous, thoughtful of, like, are you, like, what is the way you're showing up for the people around you? Like, that is so much more of what God's calling us to do and what's going to shape your experience and the experience of the people around you. It's not which song, it's how did I engage in that moment? It's not which job did I take? Did I go to full-time ministry? Did I do something else? But, like, wherever I was, how did I show up 100. And how did I engage with the people around me? And I think that's such a reframing way to think about things that it just releases a lot of pressure because it's not about getting it right. It's not about, did I make the exact right decision? No one can ever know that, but I can know, did I show up like in a healthy way and in a kind way and in a generous way and in an open way? And that's just a lot easier to name and to do. And it's easier to do, sometimes harder to let go of and like admit that and say, okay, because it feels like that perfectionism or that vision you have to release a little bit. 100. But the outcome is so much richer.
Yeah, the burden that most creative leaders carry, that I see weigh them down the most, is their own idea of perfection.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, it's not what is actually right or correct. It's what you had in your mind of, this is the way it was supposed to be. And anything other than that. And it's like, you're like, I don't know why I'm going to say fig tree, but it's like you're looking for figs on the fig tree and God's like, bro, you're in an orchard. Look at there's apples and oranges and all these things, but you're like, but there's no figs or there's no, I wanted green M&Ms and there's no green but I'm like, there's a whole bowl of other M&Ms. I know somebody went and picked out the green ones, but you're going to be okay. Yeah. Like this is still good. Yeah. But we have this idea that if it's not what we saw, it's not good. And it's just it's important we release that.
And I think like when you're saying, you can hit the reset button right now, I think people think the only way to hit the reset button is for me to quit and go try again at another church.
Wow.
And I think, man, like why, like in the same way, I keep like referencing in my mind, like and how God tests us to tithe and just going, watch what I will do. And I really think, as you were saying that, I'm getting this picture of like, if somebody did that today, like you reevaluate what your job feels like today versus what it feels like in 3 months. And I think it will feel very, very different. I think you will be a lot happier. I think people will look at you as a better leader. And you can do it now without having to go to the next church to go do that.
100%.
Because man, I think of that. Because when you first said reset, I was thinking, oh, is he going to say, go to, at the next place? And I'm like, it's so right. But that's my head going there and going, well, I guess I'll try it the next place and I'll do it better next time.
It's the reason I restart my computer multiple times a day, because at some point I just get tired of seeing all the windows. It's like that. It's like what you feel like it has to be so extreme.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason that works is because, of course, you do have your leaders, you have your peers. These are the 3 or 4 groups. You have your leader, you have your peers, you have the people you lead. But there's only one element of the equation that you have complete charge over, and it's yourself.
Yeah.
You bring you to everything that you do. So if you can change you don't need anyone's help or you don't need any outside, like in terms of controllability. It's full controllability. That I can change me. I can't change the context, but like you said, I can change how I show up in it. And often how you show up in the context is like 80 or 90% of the situation.
It's like what you said earlier when we were describing the planning center invite thing. How you phrase the thing has radically different outcomes in how people receive it. How you show up and engage in a question or a conversation or a situation has radically different outcomes for how the team around you responds. And like, I mean, it's just something where if you have been in a situation, you've been showing up in a way that's not helpful, if you go somewhere else, you've just jettisoned all the work, all the good stuff that you've built up, relational experience, whatever, that you didn't necessarily have to do. If you just shifted a few things about your behavior and the way the lenses you're looking through, like you can maintain that and also gain the improvement in this way, in a way that just has a lot more benefit.
And I mean, I can think of the moments, but how many times do you find it's like deja vu? New team, new scenario, new church, new pastor, same situation. It's only if you bail before you learn the lessons, you end up going around the same mountain.
100%.
And that's why I think, there's so many people that have been in ministry 20 years, but they only have 1 year of experience. They just did it 20 times.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Because they didn't take year 1 and learn and then compound it. They just circled the same mountain round and round, because every time they got to that same friction point, they bail, new team, it's bright and shiny until it's the same exact thing. And I think God does that because he cares more about the inside. Contribution, great, but he's after the heart. He's after the person. And he's like, okay, if you didn't want to learn it with them, well, you can wait 18 months and learn it with him. You didn't want to learn him? Okay, you 18 months, learn it with the next person. And if we would get the lesson the first time, it doesn't mean you're always going to stay on the other side of those things, but you can learn what you need to learn and bring a better version of you to whatever God is doing next. And that has nothing to do with anyone else. Yeah. It's just you and him.
So good. Dude. It's awesome. Well,
my mind is like, blown. Also, we're going to continue talking about this because so much of this leads into all I'm thinking about is the amount of people that we've talked to at Slingshot, from friends of mine, of people that have been hurt from those conversations, and I say that very carefully in quotations, that has led them to bash the church, think the church is the biggest problem, when the reality is what you're just saying is there's so much just in us that has to be figured out first before we are blaming some of that stuff. So we're gonna take a pause, and in the next episode, for those of you who are listening, so next week, we're gonna continue this conversation. We're gonna talk about church hurt specifically and what that looks like, because that's a very big topic and very thrown around word that has some meaning and can be taken out of context. So we're gonna chat a little bit more about that. But dude, thank you for this, because I'm like, we could go without pausing at all for a long time.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, so for those of you listening, we will see you next week to continue this combo.